So that tells you that it was a pretty significant amount of rain and precipitation we got. Right now, the state's snowpack is around 150% of normal for this time of the year. But when you look at it for the entire season that ends at April 1st, that's when we do the official measuring, we're approximately 55%. That's for the state. On the Eastern Sierra, which is where we get the water for the LA Aqueduct, also we had a very wet year, and it was more than what we got all of last year. We are approximately around 52% of normal for April 1st. So what it tells us is that the storms that we got were pretty significant, but we still have a long ways to go before we can say that we're no longer in a drought. Locally, here in LA in December, it was the wettest and coolest year that we've had compared to recent history. Temperature-wise, we were approximately 62 degrees, when for the last 5 years, the average is around 68. So you can see that, we are 6 degrees cooler there. And as far as rainfall, we got 9.4 inches of water. And on average for the last 5 years, we've only gotten 3.7 inches. So that's pretty significant. So it's great news, but we still need a lot more water, quite honestly. So these conditions are great. The reservoirs, unfortunately, are still not full yet. They're around 30% full. I'm talking about the state reservoirs, that is. Just to give you a little perspective, back in 2013, we had a similar December. It was extremely wet. Unfortunately, it was followed by a very dry January and February. So, I ended up being one of the driest years in history. So what it tells us basically is that we may still be in a dire situation from a water supply perspective. Right now, the forecast calls for high pressure in the Southern California area, which means that, first of all, it brings warmer temperatures, but also keeps any storms away from getting into the Southern California area. So we're going to continue to monitor that. On the outreach effort, we wanted to remind all of customers that right now we're still on our phase 2 level of conservation. So you're only allowed to water 3 days a week. There's no watering between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. And also there's no watering during rain events or within 48 hours after a rain event. That is very significant. We have recommended to the mayor's office to move from phase 2 to phase 3, and that's being taken into consideration. If we move to phase 3, that would basically mean that our watering or irrigation will be limited to only 2 days a week. And we continue to work with the mayor's office in developing, based on the developing conditions that we have, and we provide it with regular updates as well. And that concludes my update for this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Anselmo. Next, I'd like to turn it over to Reiko Kerr. We've had significant benefit from renewable power from the Red Cloud project. So, Reiko, would you like to describe that, please?
Absolutely. So as Marty said, we had a significant boost towards meeting our goal of 100% renewables by 2035. The Red Cloud Wind project that this board approved in September of 2020 began operations on December 22nd last year, a few weeks ago, and is now the largest, lowest cost, and most efficient wind farm in our renewable portfolio. The Red Cloud Wind project, located about 85 miles southeast of Albuquerque, New Mexico, is generating up to 350 megawatts of new wind power. The amount of clean energy is expected to serve about 222,300 Los Angeles homes and save 464,040 metric tons of carbon emissions annually. That's the equivalent of removing nearly 100,000 gas-fueled cars from the road per year. Red Cloud is expected to provide 6% of clean renewables towards meeting our goal of 100% carbon-free energy by 2035 and our interim goals of 80% renewable energy and 97% carbon-free by 2030. And that concludes my report on Red Cloud.
Thank you, Reiko. And the last thing I have to report is just up to date briefly on COVID. We are experiencing the same levels of outbreaks amongst our workforce that we're seeing in the general public. Fortunately, there are very few people getting sick at work, so we know that our safety protocols continue to be effective, and we continue to be very vigilant in how we're taking measures to protect our employees. Our field crews are still working their normal schedules and keeping distance both in the yards and amongst the crews. Office personnel continue to telecommute per the plan that we've been on. We are offering vaccinations through clinics, continuing with St. John's and also with LA Fire Department, as well as offering testing to our employees through LA Fire Department and test kits that they can pick up at our offices. And right now, just so the board knows, we're about 77% vaccinated as a company overall, and we are working to continue to bring those numbers higher. So that's the conclusion of my report, unless there's any questions from the board.
Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, I will move to the next item on the agenda, which is the introduction of motions for future consideration. I'm not aware of any outstanding motions to be introduced. I see nothing on my screen, so we will go to comments from ratepayer advocate. Dr. Pickle, do you have anything at this time?
I will have comments on management on the presentations as appropriate. I have no agenda item that I wish to comment on at this time.
All right, thank you, sir. Do we have any discussions with neighborhood council?
No community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the items on today's agenda.
Terrific.
Commissioner, at this point, I would suggest that we see if the, before we vote on any items, that we see if the caller offering public comment is available. And if that individual is not available, then I would recommend closing public comment before voting on the items.
Thank you, Mr. Burbidge.
Yes, thank you. No public comment is on the line, so all public comment is now closed.
Thank you. We will move to item H. Are there any items that commissioners are wishing to hear prior to vote?
None at this time.
Thank you. Then is there a motion for items L1 through items L7?
Motion to move those items.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Would you please take the roll?
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Aye.
Vice President Reyes.
Aye.
Commissioner Barad Hopkins. Commissioner LEHRER.
Aye.
Commissioner NEEMAN Brady.
Aye.
4 ayes, passed.
Thank you for that. We'll now move to management reports.
Okay, our first report is a presentation responding to the board resolution regarding the electric vehicle infrastructure planning. I believe Wendy Yancey will be leading that report, and then there'll be some additional comments by George Raffel from Customer Services. Wendy, are you on? Are you ready?
I am. Good morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Next slide, please. So today's presentation is an update to the resolution adopted by this body last October. I will provide an update to item number 1 of that resolution, which summarily asks that the department report back to this board, identifying a single individual with the responsibility for overseeing, coordinating, and directing the overall transportation, electrification, and electric vehicle programs and initiatives for LADWP. Next slide, please. I am she who will be directing this effort. There are 2 groups in existence today that will be supporting the new division entitled Electric Vehicle Strategy and Implementation. Those 2 primary groups are currently tasked with leading the strategic planning, development, and implementation of the electric transportation programs and infrastructures are the Electric Transportation Program and the EV Infrastructure Group. While the electric transportation and EV structure, I'm sorry, next slide, please. While the electric transportation and EV infrastructure groups comprise the EV strategy and implementation division, a number of groups throughout the department contribute to the success of the transportation electrification program. Next slide, please. While a comprehensive report was sent to you earlier, I do want to highlight some of those groups who who are primary contributors to the transportation electrification program. You'll note the number of boxes in green on this particular slide. Again, I will just highlight a few. The Electric Vehicle Service Design Group is the first point of contact for customers and contractors for charging station installation. They actually design and coordinate the construction and system upgrades for EV services. A next primary supporting group would be the Customer Rebate Unit, which is under the Customer Services Division, which you'll hear from a little later. That particular group performs day-to-day activities required to process customer rebate reservation requests, milestone verifications, payment request processing, and tracking of all rebate projects. They also coordinate with accounts payable to ensure customers are paid in a timely fashion. Another primary contributor would be our Environmental Affairs Division. They actually obtain the funding by selling low carbon fuel standard credits and participating in the Cap and Trade California Carbon Allowances Program. Another and last primary contributor would be our Corporate Strategy and Communication Group, which creates and implements communications for EV rebate programs and initiative through earned media, advertising, outreach, sponsorships, community, stakeholder, and industry events and workshops. Next slide. Low-income and disadvantaged communities benefit greatly from an increase in zero-emission electric vehicles because they are often located near transportation corridors where pollution from transportation is most concentrated. Next slide, please. LADWP, to address equity and environmental justice as it relates to the advancement of electric transportation, summarily, LADWP has partnered with UCLA on a research study to assess how increased usage of EVs will affect the air quality in low-income and disadvantaged communities, with the understanding that power plants are often located in these communities. So using LCFS proceeds from the California Air Resources Board, LADWP has implemented a $1,000 per charging station rebate adder for commercial level 2 charging stations installed in disadvantaged communities. Also, in development are enhancements to the used EV and residential charging station rebate programs to include low-income rebate adders for those who need it the most to further support equitable access to clean mobility options. In accordance with CARB, that's the California Air Resources Board, in accordance with their regulations, starting this year, LADWP will use at least 30% of its LCFS holdback proceeds to primarily benefit low-income and disadvantaged communities, and then ramp up to 50% in 2024. This particular holdback is for rebates, if you will, at what they call on-hood rebates. So when folks go to purchase a vehicle, they will actually receive a discount or rebate, if you will. Next slide, please. To further address equity and environmental justice, it is critical that we continue and increase outreach strategies to low-income and disadvantaged communities. We will continue to work with corporate communications on educational resources, creating engaging and relevant materials to answer frequently asked questions. We will continue with digital and traditional advertising, targeting the disadvantaged community newspapers such as La Opinion, the LA Sentinel, Our Weekly. We will pitch stories highlighting those who who are EV drivers and what their experiences are. As a side note, I don't know about you, but I've met so many EV drivers here recently, and the one thing you can't stop them from talking once you get them started about their car and how much they love them and why they drive them. It's really interesting. We will continue and grow our partnerships with various folks. As you know, we participated in the LA Auto Show for years, and we will continue to do so. We will also sponsor and look at LA area professional and collegiate teams that have the high visibility ads. We will continue our regular meetings with non-governmental stakeholders, as well as grow that group. I recently, though we have listed here EVgo, Tesla, Electrify America, and Lyft, I recently met with a group called EV Noir that are very active throughout the United States, but also have a very large presence here in the LA area.
And what is EV Noir?
EV Noir. So Noir is spelled Noire, and there's actually, they've tried to penetrate the African American and people of color market.
Oh, that's great.
But they have an entire platform, which also includes the youth. They recently had a ride and go, if you will, and they had a bunch of students and such from, and it was hosted at USC, if I'm not mistaken. So they have a plethora of platforms to conduct outreach. So we will continue and actually ramp up as our health situation changes, but we will ramp up our outreach. We will continue to work with city council offices, neighborhood councils, community-based organizations, and particularly pay close attention to faith-based institutions. In certain communities, such as these, the faith is a hub, if you will, for this type of to solicit this type of support and to increase awareness of our programs. Next slide, please. Item 1 on that resolution also asks for information as it related to budget and funding sources. Next slide. As mentioned, the California Air Resources Board contributes through the cap and trade program, through the LCFS program. They contribute about 65% to the current funding. The cap and trade program contributes about 30%, and then the power system, the revenue fund, contributes about 5%. Next slide, please. Specific functional items for both cap and trade capital and O&M, and LCFS funding capital as well as O&M are listed in this particular slide. And the next slide has some particular projects that are associated with those functional items in the multi-year programs. Just of note, I know it's small and I'm sorry, and I hope this is in your packet, but of note, if you'll notice, the rebates took the bulk of this year's funding, with the customer vehicle incentives at $16 million and the infrastructure deployment, the EV infrastructure incentives at $38 million. And so that actually concludes my presentation. If there are any questions, I will entertain them now or after customer services shares their update on the rebate program.
I actually did first. It's lovely to see you at the board meeting in this new role. Happy New Year and congratulations. And I appreciate the report. I do have a couple of questions just regarding your first few slides and the overall way in which responsibility for EV implementation of our EV program is spread across the department. I will be curious as we continue to engage at the board level, and obviously, as just part of our regular professional engagement, I will be curious as to how we begin to coalesce or to bring all of this together in a way that results in an implementation of our EV strategies, so that we can actually meet the demand that we in theory are preparing for. Among the things that sponsored or sparked this interest in getting a single sort of area of responsibility for implementation of our EV infrastructure program was the real gap between what we need to be achieving in the market in terms of deployment of infrastructure over and against what we were currently achieving, as represented by some of the feedback that we were getting from our external customers, partners, potential customers, right? In addition, if we look at LA 100, and that seems to be the reference point for all that we do, and we look at what the demand will be, what's necessary as it relates to our deployment of infrastructure versus what's planned, we're very far off the mark. And so, you've been in this role for, less than 60 days, I know. And so I don't have questions regarding these issues at this moment, but we'll be bringing this topic back to the board with a specific focus on and around those questions. And I know the motion had lots and lots and lots of layers to it, but the thing that gives me pause is the need to be able to coordinate across this wide swath of the department when so much of it reports elsewhere, and making sure that these things are all coming together in a way that allows us to seamlessly achieve our objectives, which necessitate our ability to interact with external players in a significant and impactful way. That said, I am incredibly confident that it's a task and a challenge that you are more than up to. So, good to see you, and thank you for that presentation. And George, I suspect customer service is up next, and we'll have a lot to tell us about rebates.
Thank you.
I just want to add something, Commissioner McCLAIN-HILL, on the approach and strategy and this initial phase. Thank you, Wendy, for the presentation. Where I would like to see partnerships with LAUSD and our LA Metro, because those are huge customers, and we're not just looking at individual electric vehicles and car share, but we're also looking at supporting heavy duty electric vehicles and buses. So where will that land in this structure that we have, and where the expertise will lie, and how we're going to be working with them? Because targeting the huge users will also increase and leverage our benefits on the reduction of pollution in the region, right? And at the same time, I also noticed in your budget for the vehicle to grid, which is really a huge opportunity right now for us to get involved in. And you only have like $1 million per year for that. Just wondering why that is, because I would like to see that ramped up and scaled, because that is something that will be hugely beneficial to our customers on the time of the rate that they're using it, also for our bigger commercial customers as well.
Thank you for that, Commissioner. And I do know that staff has been working closely with LAUSD as well as Metro. We can report back, or we can share a little bit now. I think Yamin or Scott Briasco might be on and can share some, or we can report back with in-depth information on both of those relationships as well as the vehicle-to-grid relationship.
A report back will be good, just so we could delve more into the details. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for Wendy before we move on?
A brief comment. The NREL study showed that vehicle electrification was probably the second biggest opportunity in reducing carbon after the conversion of the IPP plant. So this is a key environmental task, and also it is perhaps the biggest potential contributor for increased sales by DWP. Certainly in the short run, faster than building electrification way faster than building electrification might occur. So this is an important task. It has the challenge of working across the organization, which is difficult in any organization, and funding, as Commissioner Reyes pointed out, it will probably be larger and may require certain other authority as things move forward. We really appreciate you taking on this task and the size and importance of this task, both for the business and the challenges on the engineering side.
Thank you. I don't feel any pressure.
Well, that's good. And, I think that this is really all being offered in the spirit of wanting to ensure that you have our utmost attention and support in moving forward with this. And as Dr. Pickles indicated, this is critically important to this agency. And we will be checking in often and look forward to your continued diligence to your recommendations and to beginning to see a more effective strategy with appropriate funding as we undertake the challenges associated with our EV infrastructure program.
Thank you.
So we will move on to the next presentation in this group.
Good morning, Commissioners. George Rafael with Customer Service. So I'm providing an update on item 4 of the resolution. Just waiting for the deck to come up to slide 2. So we're glad to report that even with the pandemic continuing, customer interest in the rebate programs is increasing. Last year, we had $1.75 million paid through the residential EV charger and used EV programs, which is up from $1.5 million in the previous year. We currently have over 700 active applications. A quarter are back with customers requiring additional documentation or information, and the rest are going through our review process. Next slide. So the application review process is currently fairly manual and requires a lot of data entry. With over 100 applications submitted for each program every month, in addition to the 300 other applications submitted for other residential rebates, we're currently averaging a 50-day turnaround time. Next slide. So the 50 days is what we averaged in 2021, which is a 35% reduction from the previous year. And we have a number of improvements scheduled to be implemented this year, which will get us to the 30-day goal set in the resolution. In addition, we're implementing several changes that will make this more beneficial for low-income customers and will improve the customer experience for all customer segments. Next slide. So later this month, we'll be implementing the electronic application for the chargers and the additional $500 rider for the Easy Save and LifeLife customer. In addition, the charger rebate will be increased and will now cover installation costs. And we're also right now working on expanding our analytics so we can provide full operational visibility not only to our team and the electric transportation team, but to all stakeholders. And we're looking to have that set up by March. And then we'll also have, we'll have a monthly board report on this resolution item ready to provide by March. And with the USS or utility service specialist hiring list being finalized now, we will have our vacancies filled by then too.
can I ask a question of something you said? So you said that the rebate will now cover the full installation of the charger.
Up to.
Is that what I heard?
Up to limit.
Okay, up to. And then just a couple of questions on that. One, when do people, if someone already submitted their request, are they now eligible for that, or is it becoming something you would have to apply for going forward? So that's one question. The second question is it any charger? Or, and clearly there must be a list, but what makes that list of approved chargers that can be installed? And do they have to get the EV rate?
There is an approved list of the chargers. I can get that. I don't have that available right now, but we can follow up with that. As far as we're still working through as far as those that are in queue already, like when the effective date is. So we're still working through that right now. But we can provide that update as to, and then for the EV rate, I don't believe it requires that, but I'll also confirm.
Okay, thank you. And just it's generally good to know all these things. And for context, when we installed our charger, I don't know, 10 plus years ago, it was fully. DWP did give a full rebate on that, but it did mandate the EV that you have the EV rate. So I'm just curious how that has changed. So thank you.
Lastly, improvements with customer notifications and the operational processes will be implemented by year-end, which it will further improve processing time and reduce the impacts to other areas such as the call center. And so I'm happy to answer any other questions.
These are great improvements. I look forward to hearing more about the details.
Thank you. And we'll get that information back to you shortly.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, then we can move on.
Okay, our second, go ahead, sorry, Dr. Pickle.
One question, and this could be for Ms. Yancey or Mr. Raphael. Is there any program for training electricians on tricks of the trade associated with installing chargers? Perhaps a case study based approach for people that are already licensed as electricians.
I am not aware. I will ask, is Lewis on the line or Yaman might be, or Scott might be familiar with such a program? I am not.
And it might more appropriately belong in building and safety, but like an electric vehicle owner that would talk too much about it, one of the areas I encountered was a wide range in a number of bids for people not thinking about clever things.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. There is actually a national program called EVITP, which is a nationwide program that is offered, but it does require the participants to have a certain amount of journey level electrical experience, so about 800 hours. And as mentioned, it's really, a lot of our workforce may not necessarily be qualified because it does require, I believe, they have worked on behind the meter work, or have a C10 license, but we do internally have an active, workforce that is also installing and maintaining stations as well.
Yeah, I was thinking more about externally helping prep the external electrician workforce.
There is a program at LA Trade Tech on specifically the electricians that who will be maintaining, repairing the charging stations. And I know Lacey has had a good relationship with them and have graduates that are now working in the industry, specifically targeted towards the maintenance of of charging stations. So if you contact our Lacey folks on the LA Clean Tech Incubator, and they have a workforce development portion of it that pertains to the charging stations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. And if that is closing that aspect of the presentation, can we move to the next?
So Ann Santilli will lead us in discussing updates for the fiscal year 21-22 budget and our hiring.
Thank you, Marty. And I also am joined by Marianne Ans and Sunny Dees from the budget office, who I've asked to join me in case there's additional follow-up questions. But next slide. So for this presentation, I wanted to talk about our budget update through September. This is the period that we have actuals and comments from the divisions on, our system labor and overtime reports for our first quarter, and then the status of our hiring, comparing our annual personnel resolution to our occupancy, and just a highlight also on our exempt workforce. And next slide. In putting together this presentation, the budget office does have a process where they compare on a monthly basis budget versus actuals. And we've set thresholds for capital functions of 10 million over or under that we reach out to program managers for explanations, and for operation and maintenance costs plus or minus $3 million. And out of all the functional items the department has, there were 22 as of the end of September that did meet these thresholds. Next slide. So the first one is on the power side for our capital variances is our Castake additions and betterments. This was underspent for the first quarter by $13 million. And the reason for this was delay in licensing by FERC, and also by removing the spoil pile that is accumulated at Castake. The power system has reviewed this, and for the annual budget, they have revised it down by $3 million. The second one for power capital is our power new business. It did have an underrun of $13.6 million. The 3-month budget is $65 million, and they've spent $51.3 million. But the underrun on this one is basically due to labor variances for the electric service representative and the electrical engineering associate positions that need to be filled to continue power new business. And next slide. The third power capital functional item that is underrun for the first quarter is our power information system applications. It did underrun by $10 million for the first 3 months. We've spent just under $4 million, and we had a budget of $14.3. This is due to delay in installing devices. We are working on this, and we have revised this down for the fiscal year by $22.4 million. The fourth one for power capital is our long-term planning. So this functional item is underspent by $11.4 million. And this is due to delays in into the VIC LA path. So we are working on that, but it is running behind. And Power System has reduced its budget projection for the year to bring it closer in line by $11.8 million. Next slide. The next project that is running under budget is our Barren Ridge upgrade. This is primarily caused by the upgrade of the Haskell transmission. Contract award was delayed due to a delay in receiving the notice of compliance. So we are expected to award it in the third quarter of 2022. There's also a Rosemont switching station. The in-service date has been shifted out to 2025. So the Power System is working on this one. We have re-estimated the year-end budget down by $17 million. but so far we have spent $9 million on the first quarter of this fiscal year. The next one is our transmission line functional items. The underrun is primarily caused by the power plant 1 and 2 transmission line upgrade. The contract was delayed due to a lengthy request for proposal process, and the anticipated award date is January 2022. Power System has reviewed this functional item, and they have revised it down for the year by $10 million. The next page. The next page, those were all the capital items. The next one is Power System O&M costs. Our Palo Verde generating station maintenance, for the first quarter, it was running down under by $4.9 million. This is basically a timing difference. We do expect to receive the invoices from APS and catch us up by the end of the fiscal year. The next O&M functional item is generation business operating expense for power transmission distribution. It is underrun for the first quarter by $7 million, and it's attributed to other outside services delays that require regulatory approval. Power System has reviewed this functional item, and for the fiscal year has reduced it by $10 million. The next item. The next underrun was Power System Reliability O&M program. It was underspent for the first quarter by $6.2 million. This is basically due to underrunning contract work that has not been yet completed, and there are some invoices that are waiting to be processed. So we are working on this one. And then the next one on this page, the Power Training Program, it has underspent by $6 million. And basically the underrun was due to higher than necessary costs budgeted, and we'll work with Power System to reduce that one. Those were all of the Power System functional items that have variances that met our thresholds. On the next slide, for Water System, we had one functional item that met our thresholds, and this was the Groundwater Remediation program. It's right now under our functional items, it's overspent by just under $17 million. This is a multi-year functional item, so we will be working with the Water System to see if there's any adjustments that we need to make for this fiscal year that was accrued from the prior year. Water System has reviewed this functional item, and they have revised their current year budget up by $1 million. The next area is the joint organizations functional items that were over under budget. The first one is healthcare costs, and it's underrun by $3.2 million. And this is basically due to fewer employees having to fund healthcare costs for the first quarter. The next one is field operations. This underrun is also due to labor vacancies and overhead costs that were performed. The third item on this one is our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office. It is underrun by $5 million. This is basically due to the office just coming up to speed, so there's hiring in place to bring this up to the spending level that we have planned. And then the next one on this page is our energy efficiency program. For the first quarter, we have underspent by $14.7 million. And this is due to the fact that the energy efficiency program just started back up in June 2021. So it's a little bit slower to move forward, but we do expect this to grow by the end of the fiscal year. And the next slide. The next two is our cybersecurity. This is O&M. It was underrun by $3.1 million. It was really due to the staff working on capital work. So this is it is over our budget threshold, but it was really just work shifting. And then the next item on this page is our power insurance. So insurance is paid once a year. So the straight line budget shows it's underspent, but we will be coming to the board next month with a request for payment, our next board meeting for a request for payments for our insurance. And next page. Those were all, one more. And then the last five. So GASB 75 adjustment, we're underrun by $11 million. And this is funding we had in the budget to fund our retiree medical that we thought would come in above what we had to fund per our actuary. Happy to say that the retiree medical is fully funded, and so we will be zeroing out this functional item expenses for the end of this fiscal year. The next one is our Power Direct legal expenses. That's budget under the General Manager's Office. This underrun is due to underspending on professional services and less awards than what was put in the budget on a straight line basis. And for the General Manager's Office, we do show a $3.6 million underrun, and that's because there's 181 positions that have been put in the General Manager's Office to be given as divisions find they need additional resources, and so those have not been utilized yet. And then the last two are bond interest and redemption payments on water and power bonds. So our budget is on a straight line basis, but these payments actually happen on interest covers July 1st and January 1st, and then our bond principal is January 1st or July 1st. So we will be working on the budget for the next year to put these more in a monthly basis where we know the payments are going to occur to reduce these variances. Next slide. And overall, this is a snapshot of our system labor and our overtime for the first quarter. So as for the first 6 months, we did spend $374 million in labor against a budget of $428 million. So we are underspent by $54 million, but based on divisions going in and re-estimating it, we think we will actually come in a little bit closer to being about 2.9% underspent for the fiscal year. And this labor dollars do include our regular employees and our exempt workforce. Next slide. So looking at the department's headcount, as you can remember from this year's budget process, we did increase our annual personnel resolution by 1,026 positions. So the department has an APR of 12,989. As of the end of December, we were occupied by 10,714. And during the first 6 months, we did hire an additional 141 new employees coming into the department. Next slide. In looking at those numbers by system, Power System was able to hire an additional 26 positions. We did give them an APR increase of 101, knowing that they would be funding this over a 4-year period. And Water System was able to hire an additional 52 positions, and again, their 200 was to be filled over a 4-year period. And if those increases were not enough, we could tap the General Manager's Labor Planning Division to utilize the 181 positions under the General Manager. And then the next slide shows the Joint System. And you can see that the Joint System was also increased actual staffing by 62 employees, with the bulk of them coming from information technology services. And the variance there at the bottom, the General Manager's labor pool is 181 positions. So those ones are available to be hired if necessary, but we haven't determined where they're going to go. And the increases for Joint System also could be filled over a 4-year period. And then the last slide in this presentation is a reminder that we do fund for an exempt daily workforce. This is work for the department. And as of the last pay period, we had 602 positions that were working for the department as part of the exempt pool, with the bulk of them being the construction electric mechanic and then the utility pre-craft trainee employees. And from the dollars that we put into the budget, they are in line to spend their annual amount. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
This is Commissioner BARAD. I would like to ask Anne a question. When you have Anne, are you there?
Yes, I am, Commissioner.
When you have underruns where you don't spend what you've budgeted for, what is your usual position on what do you do with those underruns? What do you do with that money?
So we have two types of funds we collect from customers, two types of rates, our base rates and our pass-throughs. To the extent that the functional item is funded through a pass-through, that underrun is factored into the next quarterly or annual rate. So the customer receives that credit back in calculating for the next year's cost. And if it's for base rate items, we look at overall spending. Some base rate may be a little bit over, some may be under, but to the extent we have base rate revenue that we take in that isn't necessary for the current year, that helps us reduce our borrowing for the next year's capital.
Okay, so that the you take all that into consideration when you put this together.
We take it into consideration when we put together the budget, and we take it into consideration when we bring to the board the request to approve pass-through expenditures.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Anne.
Mm-hmm.
Are there additional questions or comments from commissioners?
No.
I'm just curious, Anne, about the number of employees, the projection for number of employees who will be eligible to retire. Are we keeping that track of that so that we align our hiring, into the workforce needs?
I think we are keeping track of it, and from an operational perspective, when I know I have an employee that has a critical position or one that I don't have a lot of redundancy on, what I do is I put that person on a substitute budgeted position, and I bring in somebody that can start training along next to them before they leave. So we do have that process.
And how is that going? Or is that now aligned? Is it aligned? Are we going to be on track for our workforce needs? I'm always curious about our capacity with LA 100, with all the other demands on our workforce. How are we going to ensure the public and our customers that we do have the capacity to deliver? I know that this pandemic, or it will be endemic, right, is hurting us and causing us, to delay our recruitment efforts as well. So in terms of the numbers, these are numbers. I'm more curious as to what are we really doing to fill those numbers, to complete those numbers, to put them into, fruition, that they are indeed, that our recruitment indeed is robust at this point in time. Maybe Marty, you can give us an answer, or Anne.
Go ahead. Marty, you look like you wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Actually, Marty, before you even go there, I did want to just further complicate the matter because I'm sort of focused in the areas that Commissioner Reyes is focused on. We look at numbers and we look at the budget and we look at it as a exercise of does it add up or not add up. But from my perspective, this translates into a work program. And at the time that these positions and the funding for these positions, especially when you go back to Power O&M, were established, they are connected to a body of work that needs to be undertaken and achieved in order for us to deliver on the programs and the policies that we have publicly indicated we will deliver. So I am curious as to how we reconcile significant variance between what we say we need to do and what your budget is just an articulation, financial articulation of what you need to do in order to achieve your objectives. So when I see that we have in the power O&M, just line item after line item after line item, a failure to meet the budget, what does that mean in connection with all of the other commitments we're making around LA 100 and around other areas of both reliability and resilience?
Okay, so if I can real quickly, I'll address what Commissioner Reyes mentioned and then get to the other on the power side. So in regard to retirement, yes, we do look at how many people are eligible to retire and the trend. And so, these hires are the net gain with including the number of retirements we have had. And so, as Ann mentioned, we are doing in many places possible pre-hiring to bring people on board prior to losing critical skills and knowledge. But that is the challenge all the time, is to both make up for retirements and to continue to gain at the same time. So we do have our eyes on that. In respect to electrical classifications, Brian, I believe, is on the phone. We have made some progress in boosting these numbers. He has some challenges he can tell you about in terms of holding on to the people we have now. But it is a process to go from the 4-year apprentice program. And so the key is to continue to feed that program and increase capacity. Brian, can you talk about the progress that we've made in that area?
Yeah, I think so. And Commissioner, you're absolutely right. When you look at the numbers, they don't exactly tell the whole story. When you look at where we are hiring and what we're getting, if we look at just some of the numbers, we've hired 639 people this fiscal year so far into the power system. But a lot of those are internal hires, right? They're promotional from our entry-level positions, but they're still going into those classifications that are going to be needed for these projects for this LA 100, right? That are going into our apprenticeships program. So when you look at that net gain of only 26 positions,
I'm hearing a lot of feedback from somewhere, so I can't hear Brian very well. I think Jill, it might be you. Can you please mute your line? Okay, I'm sorry, Brian, please go ahead.
That's okay, but it's also offset about, we have a tremendous amount of retirees and people that are leaving also. So we do have offsets there, but where we're concentrating on our hiring practices in those engineering positions that are gonna affect the LA 100 and reaching our goals there. Our training positions, like Marty said, there's continuous challenges there that we can only hold the enough trainees that we can properly train. So it's very restrictive based on the amount of crews that we have. So it's a matter of being more efficient and getting a higher quality person into that training program to increase our graduation rate so we can slowly increase those field personnel. That is a big portion of where we need to go and how we need to advance how we're prerequisites for these training positions. We do have some restrictions, and we talked about this at our last meeting on hiring open versus promotional, where we can get more people from the street. So the numbers don't really tell the whole story, but what is more specific is where we are doing our hiring to effectively change and prepare for the goals that we want to meet.
Well, I'm looking, though, for instance, at Power New Business, where we've got a $13 million variance thus far in an area where we've got significant challenges around time. Power system information. I mean, I'm just looking at, long-term planning. I'm simply looking at the areas where we are under, and I'm not certain how this differs from years past. And what I am certain about is that we have been in a position in years past where we've not made significant progress against our needs to ramp up both human capacity and overall capacity. So if you could speak to that, that would be helpful.
So specific to the Power New Business group, so we're talking about service rep positions and engineering positions. So we have ramped up our engineering. And through COVID, we did slack off on our hiring in the engineering and into our NEET program, our Associate 1 program. But we've since ramped that back up. And so we're looking at, in fact, we have a class that's starting next week, another 40 or 38 electrical engineers that are coming in on board. A large capacity then will be rotating through that Power New Business group, which should help shore up some of the issues that we're having over there. There's always been kind of issues on space and getting enough people in there, and the increase of work that's going on there since the changes in the ADU requirements and just the changes in what our encroachment requirements are. The workload has increased dramatically there, and just basically the construction going on in the city. So they are taking on a lot greater workload. So we need more people for that. So we are anticipating that we are hiring more into those positions, and we will have more engineers rotating through that Power New Business group, which should help shore things up very quickly here moving forward. Right. The other piece of that is on the service rep. So this year we hired an additional classes of electrical craft helper, which is our entry-level position that feeds our electric service rep, our meter setter. And so when we look at our goals for distribution automation, for AMI and the LA100, these feeder classes are what are going to be feeding those positions, our electrical tester positions, our meter setter positions, and our electric service rep positions. So where we're building up is the lower class to feed into those classes so they go into that apprenticeship. So we are preparing for this influx of work that's coming and for this increase of work. Our biggest challenge is the construction crews. That's where our highest limitations are and how many we can train to fill those positions.
And again, I don't mean to beat a dead horse here, but this is, I mean, at the end of the day, whether or not in our capacity to actually do what we say we're going to do is pretty critical. And, you know, it's important that we all be as clear-eyed about this as we can. So when I think about the work that's in front of us, and we talk about LA100 all the time, but that's just one thing. I mean, there's a lot connected to it, but that is one thing. In addition to LA100, you know, I'm well aware of the fact that we have our regular day-to-day maintenance and attention to our system that we have to perform. So I don't want to get so fixated on the LA100 side of the house that, you know, we missed the boat or that I'm not paying attention to that as well. So when you talk about the ramp up that is currently underway, you know, not necessarily reflected in these numbers, although it seems to me that after a point, you've got 5 people, regardless of where they're sitting, that's what you have. But in any event, are we backfilling quickly enough so that we can do both the new work associated with our transition to 100% renewable and the existing work with respect to just the overall operation and maintenance of our system? And you mentioned the issues regarding construction crews, which comes up, you know, every time as a significant limitation. You know, how and when should we expect to have a strategy to address that? And what does failure to address that mean?
Well, you know, we have, every year we come up with a new strategy, right? And we keep pushing forward to improve the numbers that we have on the construction forces. So when you look specifically at our electrical mechanic program or our distribution mechanic, our lineman program, those are our biggest deficits where we need to hire more people. And that's where the biggest gaps in our APR, that's our large vacancies on the power side. And it's those construction groups that we need to have the improvement on. But like I said, the limitations that are there aren't going to go away. Our strategy is to improve our graduation rate so we have more people going through to keep the maximum amount of people in those training programs as we can. So we have multiple strategies on how to advance that. A lot of it is a higher quality person coming in, addressing some of our restrictions that we have with the personnel office when we hire versus promotion versus open candidates, where we can target a higher quality candidate coming in and increase our graduation.
Brian, can you hear Andy talk about the looking at the changing the setup of the crews and how that'll allow us to have more apprentices in the program?
Yeah, I was going to say I have two. First, I thank you, Andy. I will be interested in that. I'm also, though, will be very interested in specifically where we are with respect to the issues at personnel, because they have been there for a while and they are, I understand, quite critical and need to be addressed, or we need to be having a different conversation with policymakers at the city of LA who are, driving, and rightly so, our rapid, move toward a cleaner grid. In addition to that, I'm also interested in the degree to which this involves a close collaboration with IBEW and how that's going. It's often difficult to have some of these conversations at the table because I know that to have these conversations without them at the table, because I know that they are heavily engaged in and have a great deal of influence as to how we proceed around these issues. So just in that overall frame, Andy, if you could include that in your comment, that would be helpful.
Yes, commissioners, as Brian talked about the difficulties we have, what we started to look at is, because it takes, 36 months or 42 months to create a journeyman or a journey level person from, entering training to breaking out as a journey level. So we, in having our discussions with IBEW, over the sort of the last year, what we've been looking at is, that's not going to change what it takes to get somebody in and through, but what can we do? What strategy can we put in place in order to look at what we currently have and figure out how we clone them into more people? So that's what we're in the process of working through right now, is how do we take our existing workforce, sort of change the way we work on a daily basis, how we build our crews, and from that, those changes, then we look at being able to create more crews based out of our existing crews just by doing the work we do differently and staffing our crews differently. These are things that, that require a partnership with IBEW, because we would have to change some existing policies that are in place, that have been previously negotiated. So we're currently, in fact, I was, this morning communicating with Brian and his directors and IBEW on ideas for how it will require us to create at least one new classification, and then, go and negotiate and get to a point where we can, again, take what we do and divide it, and basically, I think if we're successful, I estimate we can get almost up to probably 50% of additional crews in place once we get this done. And then by increasing the number of crews, then obviously it can increase the number of trainees. And then we're also, as we look at this, how do we make the department more attractive, right? What really back, 30 years ago, and even up until about 10 to 15 years ago, if you were a journey level person looking to come work on the West Coast, water and power was the place you wanted to come. And so, currently with what's going on with the work outside of us, with contractors, we're not that first option for people to come to. So those are the other things we're looking at with our labor partners is how do we make the department more attractive and become the optimal place to come if you're looking to move here again, because that's really how we've supplemented our hiring over all the years. So that's also an area where we're looking, because there are a lot of journey level workers that don't work for a set company, that work for contractors. And if we can entice them to come as well, then every couple that they brings a new crew in. So we're working hard at all aspects of that. And and we're having very good discussions, figuring out what we can do internally, and then what will have to go and be approved by EERC and City Council.
Thank you. Dr. Pickle, if you could weigh in, please. I know that I've had considerable discussions with you and with your team, Camden in particular, regarding where the department is in connection with its overall staffing and how that aligns to its, stated both today and future work plan. And the one thing I just want to say about future work plan, as is pointed out routinely now by our council members when they speak to LA 100, the future is not, tomorrow, it is right now. I mean, we're talking about goals that we've set for 2035. And, we are now in 2022. So we have zero time in order to ramp up, and we can't continue to have conversations about what we need to do and what we're planning to do and what we hope to get done down the road without having some pretty serious implications for what we'll be able to accomplish over the next several years. And I don't say it by way of criticism. I'm just speaking to the fact that we're talking about, y'all all know you're people and you're overseeing and working with people. And there's only so much that human beings can get accomplished, without additional support or additional bodies. So in any event, Dr. Pickle, if you would just weigh in on sort of your perspectives about where we stand today versus where we need to be.
On the one hand, we have our ambitions in a very busy or very unusual environment. We have very high anticipations for the growth of renewables. We need to grow and facilitate electric vehicles and electrification of buildings, and that's together with a continuing construction boom related to auxiliary dwelling units and also overall in the economy. On the other hand, we have a very tight job market, and the oddest job market we've seen in maybe 2 generations, with a high level of quits, a high level of hires, and a struggle by all those who are hiring. And at the same time, it's clear we're struggling with hiring because we're over 2,000 short on our APR versus our actual occupancy. And as I recall, and I don't have it at hand, the expected occupancy was somewhere halfway between the current occupancy and the APR. And we're also seeing a deficit of, and the dollar amount associated with that difference alone is somewhere between 200 and 400 million a year. And we also see a first quarter where we're 50 million short, which adds up on an annual basis to be 200 million. So we really have a tough task in hiring and growing our work effort on multiple dimensions. And I agree on the challenges of growing the journeyman class, but we probably, as has been discussed, we need to find a new way of doing that training and help people get to journeyman capabilities.
Thank you. I appreciate the report. I certainly appreciate all of the feedback and input from the power system and you as well, Andy. You notice I got that power system. That was Brian.
That breaks my heart.
I didn't mean to slide in that dagger, Andy, but you were sort of, and you as well. Appreciate that, and we'll want to have some pretty focused conversations over the next quarter so that we can reconvene and really keep an eye on not just the numbers as sort of an independent thing out there drifting, but how those numbers relate to our capacity to, to continue to stand up to all of the demands that are currently confronting the department. And just really appreciate that that people are going above and beyond to try to both in real time do this work, but also to think through and work with various partners to increase our capacity to do it. So I appreciate that. Are there any other questions or comments concerning what's in front of us? If not, we will move to the next item.
Okay, our last presentation is on the status of the Customer Debt Relief Program, and George Rafael will give that report, and this should be very good news.
Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for providing time for this status update. Actually, I'll just let it, kicking off. So as of last Thursday, we have received state approval for both the electric and water state relief applications, which will provide approximately $285 million in assistance to customers in need. So this will average about $850 per service. And we've received the funds on the energy side, and we're expecting to receive the water funds in about 4 to 6 weeks. However, we will be progressing with the customer credits in the meantime. So the next slide. So this has been a pretty involved initiative, but all the needed groups have jumped in and collaborated. This included financial services, the legislative team, IT, communications, water quality and exec, and customer service. So we're on schedule to process the credits this weekend. We'll be utilizing a lot of billing system programming to apply the credits, but we still need to do quite a bit of manual processing. So we've successfully tested the process and completed 2 test runs. So we should be set to begin on later this week. Next slide. Once we complete the processing over the weekends, customers will be able to immediately see the credits if they check their balances through the web or IVR or with one of our team members. We had previously sent a notification letter to eligible customers that they'll be receiving state relief assistance. But to follow up on that, we'll be sending another letter notifying those customers of the credit being applied and the credit amount. And in addition, customers will also see the credits on their next bill, which will be generated over the next 60 days. Next slide. So in addition, we're actively working on the Customer Connections Program. For this new program, we've allocated $15 million to provide additional support for low-income customers. By helping us further understand our customers and realign our programs, 80,000 customers will be eligible to participate in this program and receive a one-time credit that is equivalent to their outstanding water and power bills. So we've completed the research and program design, and we're currently working on the survey setup and the outreach campaign. So once this weekend's activities with the relief funds are done, we'll finish the technical design for the bill credits, and then we'll be on track to launch the program in early February and have it run through June of this year. Next slide. So after these major relief efforts, we expect that many of our customers will still need assistance. So we're actively promoting the streamlined Easy Save discount program and the extended payment arrangements. And we'll be continuing to do this. So I'd like to turn it over to Joe Romala, who will be kind of walking us through the outreach efforts.
Good morning, Commissioners. Steve, go ahead and advance the slides, please. And the next. So there's 2 real parts to the outreach and awareness campaign and advertising that we're doing because we really want as many customers as possible to enroll in low-income program, our new Easy Save customer program. We've put advertising funds and a strategy around that effort, in addition to communicating specifically about the credits that will be appearing. Our customers don't have to apply for the credits. We want to make sure that they know about it. We obviously want to take credit for ensuring that they know that we're there, attempting to help and share this funding from the state. We're focusing on those areas that were most impacted by the pandemic. People who've fallen behind on their bills, we know, live in more disadvantaged communities of color. And so we've designed the advertising and outreach campaign around that. Next slide. We've really used all of our tactics, both from an earned media standpoint. We did a lot of interviews. I know our board president did, Marty Adams did, and others, and got a lot of good coverage that we'll show you in a moment. We also did radio ads. We did some direct mail as well, digital media and advertising, social media ads, as well as organic posts. And we actually used outdoor transit freeway signs as well. And really just look for a 360 approach to this with the funds that we had available. Next slide. From a budgeting standpoint and timing, Easy Save, which again is the low income program where we want to promote to get as many customers signed up as possible between now and March when the moratorium ends. We've started in November and will continue at least through March. George and I spoke before the meeting, and probably we're going to want to continue that afterward, because we really need this program to be one that customers take advantage of the ease with which they can apply now online on our system, as well as renewing. We did see a drop off in customers renewing during the moratorium, and we think that's in part because without having to pay a bill every 2 months, the importance of being on a low income program was not as significant. So we've gotten the numbers back up. You'll see those stats in a moment, and we want to keep growing it to reach those really significant tens of thousands of customers we know who are eligible, who are not participating in the program, because it unlocks these other benefits like extended repay. The Help is on the Way campaign is really centered around December and January. We're in discussions as well around that with the mayor to do a press event as well, highlighting our work to get that $285 million distributed to our customers. Next slide. Back in November, we put out a press release when this item went to the board. We've also did one around Easy Save as well to highlight it. That was really the beginning of the outreach and awareness effort that then followed for a good month and a half of various earned media opportunities. Next slide. You'll see some here and on the next slide as well. Some of the coverage we got from really, it was great. We had KNBC coverage. We had Channel 7, KCBS, really hit major media well with this program. Again, we're going to get another round of that when we apply the credits, get media press release out around that, and also do a press event with the mayor. We'll continue to look for every opportunity to hit earned media. Next slide. On this, we did radio ads as well. I'd like to go ahead and play you the KJLH one. This was part of the overall paid advertising campaign.
Did you fall behind paying your water and power bill during the pandemic? LADWP is helping pay off past due bills with no application required. LADWP has nearly $300 million in federal and state funds to help over 250,000 eligible customers pay their overdue bills. Customers will begin to see automatic credits on their bills in the coming weeks. To see if you qualify, visit ladwp.com/cares and also learn about other ways to save.
We did that in multiple languages. So you'll see here Spanish, as well as Korean and Chinese. Next slide. The print advertising campaign, we actually were given some nice props from one of the editors at one of the local major newspapers in South Los Angeles. They thought that the ads were really nicely designed. It was a lot to communicate. We bought good-sized ads for this because for Help is on the Way, we needed to communicate some key points. And I've also mentioned we've had some good advisory help on the strategy from Dakota Communications. That was a contract that had come to you last year, really helping us simplify and target these messages to reach as many people as possible. Sometimes you tend to put too little info in an ad. You can also put too much. There was a lot to communicate here, and we thought we designed it very well. These were designed all in-house, but we've also been working with Carmen and his team to simplify the messaging and make sure that it's calibrated just right. You'll see the other outlets on here, and go ahead and flip to the next slide, Steve. In addition to that, we had direct mail. This was a postcard that went to every customer that was identified as getting a credit. It was challenging because we needed to do it in multiple languages. There's also a challenge, believe it or not, with getting envelopes these days. So the postcard was key to use, and unfortunately, we just did our best here with the content. But again, it was just one part of the overall outreach and awareness strategy. And then again, at the bottom, you'll see there's a direct letter that will be sent after the credits are applied. And customers will see it on their bill. They'll begin to see it online if they check their accounts beginning next week. Next slide. This is a good example of just utilizing more direct customer emails. You'll notice that the open rate on these is in the 34%. That's pretty good. I was asking my team around the open rate around December, and that's really because people are not paying as much attention to their email and other things around the holidays. So for Help is on the Way, we're going to do another send on that this month to make sure that we reach these customers, because we have a pretty good email list of customers who've given us their addresses. You'll see that number is 829,000 in December. The number was lower in November because there were some server issues that interrupted the outbound mail on that. But there was a lot of interest in this content. You'll see in December, even though the open rate was low, this particular story was clicked on over half the time by people who did open it. And then we did a targeted one with Easy Save as well. So we did those because we wanted to make sure people knew, as many people as possible knew prior to the holidays. But now that the credits are being applied, we're going to continue and do that again this month and potentially into next month, just to sort of clean up and make sure we get this message out as broadly as possible. Next slide. This was just a community newsletter that went, as well as a Nextdoor posting that went out prior to the holidays. Nextdoor is really popular for us. This is the neighborhood network. That's an app that we use to communicate about everything from construction project impacts as well as to key programmatic priorities of the department and the board. Next slide. This is our web content. When those radio ads direct people to the CARE site, the one on the right is what you see. The one on the left is really integrated in with customer service and all the work they did to get the automatic enrollment and all of the financial assistance that's programmed. If people go to this page, they can identify which financial assistance programs they're eligible for. So that's just an example of the web pages that are up using our current existing LADWP.com. Next slide. This was a digital toolkit that we're going to work and really focus on sharing with nonprofits moving forward. We have provided this to some, but we really want to engage them to help get the word out, especially about Easy Save. We saw the benefit that they provided a year ago when we really involved them with getting the grant money out that was last holiday season back in 2020 into 2021. So very nice graphics here that can help people understand the aid and the assistance programs we can provide in addition to the extended repayment plans. Next slide. Just to give you an idea of some of the multilingual ads that were run on digital, we really hit a number of different communities, cultural communities. We did, I believe it might have been our first ads in Farsi as well. Next slide. And this is some of the social media posts and some of the stats around them. Some of these are organic and some are paid. These ones in particular are organic. Next slide. And again, more of the social media ads that were placed. If you are on and follow us, you'll probably see these ads. And if you aren't and you live in LA, you'll probably get them as well. Next slide. The outdoor transit ads, these are some of the examples. Lots of visibility on these ads, but obviously less opportunity to communicate detail. So we wanted to push people to the website. Next slide. Some of the internal communications for our employees. And next slide. This is the last slide. It really has some stats, and I'm sorry that this slide in particular only shows a snapshot of each of these years, but I wanted to share with you, we did get the final stats here, and it shows you an example of the applications received. In 2019, the number was significantly low. As you know, we were not highlighting this program, but that was due to some decisions that had been made by the previous general manager. That changed dramatically with support of Marty as well as the board. In 2020, you'll recall we had the real strong push for the grant funds that were available that customers had to apply for. And we took that opportunity to enroll people there, as well as through that push in partnership with nonprofits. And the numbers went up. In 2021, these are the preliminary figures. These, again, are the 6-month figures, but I'll tell you, in 2019, the total was 46,000. In 2020, it was 72,000. And in 2021, it was 65,000. And I think that would conclude if you fast forward one more slide there. Thank you. Thank you all very much. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments regarding the presentations on debt relief?
Joe, I wanted to commend you on a really graphically pleasing output of messages to the community. I think that you got just the right amount of text, because when it's too much, people just don't read it. And I think that you've done a great job, and the photos are great, the message is great. Congratulations.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions or comments?
I just have a question for George on the EC Save application process. Has that been streamlined? How was it streamlined? And also, are we, assuming, right, that low-income customers may not have access to computers? What are we doing about that to provide them access?
Thanks, Commissioner Reyes. So far, we've implemented the initial phases of streamlining the application, not requiring the proof of income, which I know you were spearheading early on. And we've also made the application available both, so there's electronic online, but we also continue to provide that by mail to the customers, and we also receive them in person at the service centers. We are looking working with some community groups to see if we can set up workshops, whether it's having stations there to get some assistance for customers to be able to fill that out. We're also setting up, which we'll be launching at the beginning of February, is customer consultations. So in that, walking them through the different options, but then also being able to, whether they're doing it online or, on a paper copy, walking them through the application to be able to assist them in filling that out and getting that dropped off or mailed in. So we're trying to expand how we support the customers and make it easy. No pun intended there, but really just to try to facilitate it as much as possible, and realizing the different needs of our different customer segments. So we're definitely not trying to force it down the online path by any means, but we're looking through all the channels.
Thank you.
Additional questions or comments? I too want to commend Communications for their really robust effort to get the word out about these programs and this work at the department. We want to work very hard and be very mindful that when people hear about DWP and what we're doing, that they're not just getting bad news and awful headlines along with bills, but that they're actually being made aware of the ongoing and substantive work that's being done by the department to support the citizens of LA. So this was a very good effort. It looks great. All I would say is more and more often. So appreciate it.
President,
yes.
I just had one comment and perhaps a request for the time when we get another report, which is how many people are eligible. So what % have we been reaching thus far? And I would actually really urge the department to work with the nonprofits and also churches to try to get this information out, because it's a great effort. It's graphically interesting, but it doesn't look to me like we've reached as many people as we could be reaching. But I don't know what our goal is or who is eligible, how many people are eligible. It would be interesting to know.
Thank you for that, Commissioner, and no question, metrics-driven reports that identify what the overall universe is, what our goal is, and how we stack up is critical for us to assess the the actual success of these programs. So this will be back on the agenda in the not too distant future. And at that time, we will certainly be looking for that level of disaggregation of, what, or that level of information as we look at what we're doing here. I would also just want to point out that when you are thinking about media, it's really important to review the targets and the list. For instance, there's a paper, LA Focus, which is hugely impactful and penetrates in a pretty extreme way in the South LA space that's not on our target list, whereas Watts Times I'm not so certain about. And then there's also, I would encourage us to really look at updating and staying as current as possible as to where people are getting their information from. Also, George, I noted that you've updated us on two aspects of this work. I don't see, you made reference to the customer consultations that you intend to launch. I'll be interested in understanding more about that. I didn't see any reference to or any update on the additional DWP sponsored program that will support customers whose arrears fall outside of this window. So I will be wanting to understand where that is and how that is being moved forward as well. I did not forget.
Yes, we were just focused on the near-term ones, but we'll provide that update on all the items at the next update.
Okay, well, we will definitely be back around to this. If there's nothing more, we will move to filed items. And are there any questions or comments regarding filed items from anybody at the dais? Seeing none, we will go to item K, which is the minutes, and we have K1 to take up first. SUSANA, or Commissioner Reyes, is not eligible to vote on K1 as she was not present at that meeting. Is there a motion with respect to the minutes under item K1?
I so move. I move adoption.
I will second that.
Second.
Oh, thank you for that. We have a second from Commissioner Newman Brady. Can we please have the roll taken at this time?
Board President McCLAIN-HILL.
Aye.
Vice President Reyes. Oh, sorry. Commissioner BARAD Hopkins.
Aye.
Commissioner LEHRER. Commissioner LEHRER.
Aye.
Commissioner Newman Brady.
Aye.
4 ayes.
Terrific. That motion passes. We'll now move to the minutes under K2. And those minutes, Commissioner BARAD Hopkins and Commissioner LEHRER are unable to vote on those minutes. So if I could have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Terrific. It's been moved in second. Would you take the roll?
President McCLAIN-HILL.
Aye.
Vice President Reyes.
Aye.
Commissioner Newman Brady.
Aye.
3 ayes. Passed.
Terrific. We have taken up items L. It looks like we are ready for closed session. Mr. Brejovich.
At this point, we will recess into closed. Yes, at this time, we will recess into closed session to deal with items M1 through items M5 on the agenda. And in accordance with California Government Code Section 54957.1, We will report any final actions taken therein. Board members and those participating in closed session, please note that you do have a separate WebEx invite for that meeting. What time would you like to reconvene in closed session, Board President?
It's 11:53. If we could reconvene at noon, that would be great. We can just move right through and end the meeting today, hopefully substantially earlier than normal. Does that work for everybody to reconvene at noon?
Yes.
Okay, great. Let's do that then. Thank you.
Thank you.
We are in recess until noon.